when they ask you where are you from and you say Ecuador, did you get reactions from people?
Yes, they do. Yes. Yeah. But I said, yeah, my last name is Chang, so I am 3/4 Chinese, so it's very fast and forward. And I'm so secure about who I am. I'm so proud of my grandparents from where they came.
Welcome to El Cafecito Travel Talks with Tony Lloyd. Each episode, Tony sits down with travelers, expats, creatives, and community voices from across Latin America and beyond, sharing stories of travel, culture, connection, and the journeys that shape us. So grab a cafecito or a tea and enjoy the conversation.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and accepting the invitation to have tea with me today. Do you want to start off just by letting everybody know your name?
My name is Douglas. My last name is Chang. I have Chinese blood from both sides of my parents. And I was born in Ecuador. There it starts, many years back.
Do you know the story of the journey and how your Chinese family came to Ecuador? What generation it was? What were the conditions? And how was the journey for them? How did they actually make it?
From what I have gathered, really, because the grandparents passed away many years back. I spent a lot of time with my paternal grandmother, a lot of time with her because she lived with us for many, many years, and then she moved to my uncle's house until she passed away many years later. And I gathered they came by boat. Sooner or later, one person came to a little town about, in those days, today it's like 2 hours from Guayaquil on the highway. But in those days, it would probably take like a week because there were no engines. There were sort of like the palancas, which means like the stilts to push the canoe upriver and then come down with the flow. And in a little town called Colimes, and that's where our whole, from both sides of the families, met in a little town called Colimes, and that's where my parents were born, and that's where I was born too, in that little town. So I gathered they came by boat, and it probably took them a long, long time. And my uncle went back to Hong Kong, to China, as a student, and then got trapped by the war. And from him, I gathered he took a boat from Hong Kong to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco somewhere along the coast to Guayaquil.
Okay, I've been to Columbus. It's a very small town. What was the particular reason? Why did they end up in such a small town?
I gather it was because one person arrived there one way or the other, and then there were the cousins and the neighbors. They all came from Guangdong, which is the closest province to Hong Kong. So it makes sense. And then my uncle's side was Hakka. And I gathered from my grandmother that Hakka is not a very nice description of a group, of an ethnic group. But they were very daring, and they were the ones that left. And I think sooner or later, somebody arrived and then brought family and relatives and so on. And I gather my grandmother was either given away. My uncle says she was brought in as a bride, but I suspect no. She was given away, and she probably came in as a maid. Because putting one and one together, she ended up marrying her boss. So she couldn't come on a marriage contract and then marry her boss. It doesn't make sense. So it looks like she was a servant, and then eventually she married her boss, and then she remarried another man. And there was one particular interesting thing that she insisted that her new husband have the same last name as her first husband. That's what I can tell you, how she got here. And then on my grandfather's side, I know very little. All I know is they came to a different town called Wuhan, which probably you have visited also. And they were very wealthy. at some point in time, because as usual, they were in merchandising, buying crops, rice, buying commodities. And then my uncle from that side of the family had a successful office in the near Malecon on Calle Panama. Well,
the boardwalk in Guayaquil. Malecon is the Spanish word, the boardwalk in Guayaquil.
The boardwalk in the scenic part by the river.
Yes.
And if anybody was to make it in Ecuador, you had to either do Quito or Guayaquil, because those were the biggest centers. In those towns were tiny, but that's where all the trading happened, where people left for Europe that way. And the thing is, my grandfather probably did better off because they were buying cocoa beans, and I remember them drying them on the street, and then with this wooden shovels, they'll pick them up every afternoon, put them in sacks, and then in the morning, they'll bring them out and then use the sun to dry the cocoa beans. And as you know, the expression in Ecuador, se cree el gran cacao, that's where it comes from. Okay. Cocoa was money, was wealth. It meant you were able to travel to Europe, usually Paris. And that was a neat thing to do in those days. You exported that to Europe, and that was money, wealth. The biggest wealth came in those days from cocoa beans, not oil, nothing else but cocoa beans. So anybody that traveled to Europe and was able to send the kids to study in Paris was because he was trading in cocoa beans.
Okay. So on one side, they came and they had money. On the other side, they came more for domestic work.
No, I'll correct yourself. All of them were very poor. Came with one hand in front and one hand on the back. Okay. What happened is that the Chinese usually found a way to trade, to do business, to survive, to work. If they were in trade, eventually, if they got to Guayaquil, that means they did well in Wuhan. And by the time they got to Guayaquil, sooner or later, they did something else. And if they had a shop buying cocoa beans and exporting them or selling them to an exporter, that means they were better off than anybody else in the family. That's from my mother's side of the story. From my father's side of the story, my grandmother had a general store. She will make bread. She will sell firewood. She will sell anything. She will make dresses and just a general store. Sell juice. My father, at age 12, was not allowed to go to school anymore. He had to work. So he had a wooden tray, selling bread and come y bebe. Come y bebe is badea juice, because it has the seeds and the fruit. And that you mix it together and with other fruits, and it's called come y bebe.
Come y bebe. Okay, to eat and to drink.
Yeah, at the same time.
At the same time. So your 4 grandparents all came from China?
No.
Is that correct?
3 of them did. Okay. One of them, my maternal grandmother, is Ecuadorian. And we gather is some sort of Spanish descent because her last name is Miranda.
Okay. But everybody else came from China.
Originally, all 3 of them came from China, Guangdong.
Okay. And what was it like for you? Do you remember what it was like growing up in Ecuador? We don't look like the stereotypical of our environment. What was that like for you?
In those days, well, of course, this is 70 years back. In those days, if you talk about discrimination or being treated differently, it was more so based on economic status and on your parents or your grandparents. Why do I say that? My grandmother, being Chinese, was very strict in the sense that we lived in a very poor neighborhood of Guayaquil, very basic, but she would not really allow us to go and play with the other kids. And that was one way to control who we associated with. Why? Because there was always fighting, and then yes, you will get insulted. If you call chino de mierda at somebody, that's an insult. Mm-hmm. And the locals will do that anytime, if you beat them in a soccer game or playing canicas, they will do that. Marbles, yes. But it didn't really dawn on me at all because it was not based, it was more who your family was and where you went to school. I repeated the first grade because my father moved me from a public school to a private school. In those days, it was the American School of Guayaquil, was the school for English. So I think my father had this dream that his kids had to get better education and hopefully, eventually, have ties with the United States or Europe.
But was there a moment where you thought, I'm different from the others?
No, never.
Okay.
We knew, the last name. It didn't come. I didn't question it myself in those terms. Why? Because private school, it's a challenge. Learn English when nobody else spoke it. It was a privilege, and I took it as that. And then I was traditionally a very good student. I was always the first or the second student in the classroom. We were probably the only Chinese in the whole area. Maybe 10 blocks away, a distant relative or somebody. But didn't feel that way. I never thought of being discriminated at all in Ecuador. No. I knew I was different, but I was different in a different way. Okay. Being a good student, being a top student in the classroom, speaking English also. Because as I was growing up, my older brother went to international fellowship for 3 months to West Virginia. So he was the first one to leave Ecuador, of the grandchildren, to study in English in an American high school. And that was a privilege. And then we followed after that. And that was the goal, get a better education and associate. Normally, whoever spoke English was either parents working in Ecuador or some sort of reason to be in Ecuador, and that was considered status. Okay. It was not discrimination, negatively strained, okay, but you associated with them because of the status. It gave a name. Okay. Normally, even today, anybody coming from a foreign country normally is thought of as a person that has better education, a better system economically. It comes from a better place, if I could put it in words.
In your household, as you said, you were the only Chinese family for blocks around. Do you remember any sort of things, customs or things that you did that was very much Chinese in the household? Were there certain things or food or types of music? What was
the food? It was my grandmother was a great cook. My mother supposedly moved into that household when she was 13, 14, merging with my father. They never got married until 40, 50 years later. But they lived together, they had the kids, and normally, like in Ecuadorian family, the people getting married move into the big house. And that's what we did. We lived with my grandmother. And then my cousins moved from Colimes into Guayaquil. They had they had 2 bedrooms, one for the parents and one for the 2 kids. So my cousins moved into the house in Guayaquil. And that's how we got them all out of Colimes eventually.
So everyone in the family was all living in one house, the grandparents' house?
Yes.
Okay. And how many other brothers and sisters do you have?
There's 4 of us total.
Okay. Now yourself, as an adult, give us a little bit about the places you've traveled to.
As I said, my goal was to be a good student. I did not question it. It was something you do, and you do the best, and go for it. And so as soon as I turned 16, 17, it was my turn to do international fellowship in the U.S. I was assigned Binghamton, New York, way upstate.
Okay, and what did you do in Binghamton, New York?
I went to high school. And the goal was, my father was so insistent, go there and get your high school diploma in the U.S. Well, I did. I was very obedient, and I did. I tried. I went. I did my best. I found out Mr. Johnson was my English teacher. He said, sorry, can't do that. So that was it. I tried to stay in the States, and maybe until the end of the school year, because I had to come back in April or May of that year. And then, I had to go back home. That was the role of international fellowship. I went home. But in the meantime, I was very independent. My brother had been 1 year at KU, the University of Kansas in Lawrence. And my father said, well, you should go this area too. So I did that on my own. I felt confident in English to apply that. I did my 3 months in Binghamton, Green Central High School. And then I flew back to Ecuador. And within a week, I was back in Ecuador. I got a letter from the KU saying, you have been accepted. But I had not graduated. I had to do my senior year in Ecuador when I came back. I was very nervous, but I was very daring and uncomplicated at the time. I said, they accepted. I sent the transcripts. I've done all the work. And they said, you are being accepted. So within less than a month of being in Ecuador, I flew back to Kansas City. They picked me up. I went to a dorm. Oliver was the name of the dorm. And the only requirement was that I take intensive English for one summer, which I did. And that's how I ended up in KU. And then from KU, I did my 2 years, I believe. But then my third year, I was anxious to live in Israel, and I ended up in Jerusalem, lived there for 5 months. Okay. I learned a little Hebrew, stayed there, and then I didn't want to go back to KU yet. So then I moved to Paris. I took a French 8-week course at La Sorbonne, and didn't want to go back. So then I moved to Switzerland, and I did 1 semester at the American College of Switzerland in Leysin, and KU wrote back saying, if you don't come back, you are not going to graduate. So I packed my bags and went back to KU, had one of my best years at the university. I got my degree at KU. It's the Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration. Okay. And then I moved to Canada. And I did a master's degree in Canada and lived there for about 2.5 years.
So with all this travel that you've been doing and all this travel, when you say to somebody, when they ask you where are you from and you say Ecuador, did you get reactions from people?
Yes, they do. Yes. Yeah. But I said, yeah, my last name is Chang, so I am 3/4 Chinese, so it's very fast and forward. And I'm so secure about who I am that, in the good sense, that I don't mind if they ask more questions and so on. It's more important that why do they want to know? Is it just to fill in the blanks, or is it just to bullshit around, like you said? If somebody feels offended, it's their problem. I'm not offended. This is what I am. I'm so proud of my grandparents from where they came, and my father, who never finished second grade, and then to do so well in life and get us all educated in the U.S. and me, Israel, and Europe and everywhere else without his permission. But eventually he approved it because he would send the money, But no, not really. I don't feel. I think that it's more, what interest do you have in asking any question, really, in that sense?
Okay. And I think you might have just answered my next question. My next question to you was going to be, what would you recommend to somebody who might feel like they don't look the stereotypical way of the country or the place they're living?
There's a key word. Just be a good citizen. No matter where you go, all the doors will open, and if they shut down, they will reopen, or somebody else will open it for you. It's the best way to deal with that. Because I've been many, many different places. It's been wonderful altogether, summarizing it. But there's instances where people did discriminate. Okay? But as I said, I have a strong personality. It's not my problem, it's his problem or her problem. And continue.
Okay. And with all your travels you've done, have you been to China or to...
No, I have not. My parents went, my older brother did, my cousins, my uncle will go there vacation almost every 2-3 years. I haven't, and I have a reason for it. It's because I feel so lost, and I will go with my friend Vico, who organizes tours and then sells it on the internet. Because we did South Africa that way. I would have never gone to South Africa in my life if he had not said, do you want to go? And I said, yes. And we did it, had a wonderful time. And that's the only way I see myself going to China briefly and enjoying it, because there's so much. If I go to China, I would like to see the pagoda where my grandmother lived nearby. And there were probably 10, 20 kids. Her siblings were like 15 or so, and they were barely eating, from what I gather. And she will weave sandals and go to the market and sell them, and then come back, and with that they will buy food. That's what I heard. And then there's a pagoda that my uncle says is still there. It's been refined and rebuilt or whatever, but it's still there. But it's more the memory of why my uncle and the other brothers had to go there and see the pagoda. My brother did. And then they have all the information, but I see no interest, really, because I think it's more important if I go to China to meet some of the locals, get as much information, learn about as much as I can about their country now, because it's too late now. You know, my grandmother lived 150 years ago there. But if it happens, well. If it doesn't, I wouldn't make the effort like I did to Israel. It's not necessarily see my roots and so on. I think I have enough putting together how my grandmother came to Ecuador and how successful she was and how successful her kids were, all of them, with very little education. She was illiterate in Chinese and in Spanish. So imagine in those days, we're lucky nowadays with all the technology and so much open to us to learn. So that I would enjoy. I still do it. I've learned much about China now on YouTube.
You just recently made a decision to move from Guayaquil, where you spent most of your life, to Cuenca. What was that? What were some of the reasons for that?
It's quite easy because you visit Cuenca, you can walk around still. Why I was thinking about the reason. The main reason is security. And the second one, I don't work anymore. I'm retired, but I still work. Finances and the stock market and so on. And that I can do from anywhere, which helps. Okay, with technology, I can be anywhere.
You know, Cuenca is a destination that a lot of people from different parts of the world is choosing to also retire here. And for a lot of those people, they're not as worldly traveled as you are. What's a suggestion that you would have for those people to be able to adapt well into this environment?
Give it a try. It doesn't matter. It could be anywhere in the world. Just go there, live there, temporarily, so whatever, and follow your instinct, your feelings. And the same thing with a city or a town. I have moved a lot. I can choose. In fact, if I had a choice, I would move more. But follow your instinct, your feelings, live there for a while, do your best. I think, no, go for it, enjoy it, and that's what I'm doing. I'm so happy I've done the homework. I was here a few times last year, and I came back 3 times, and the environment has been so positive that I think it's highly recommended, and especially if you're retiring. I think it's a good community.
Okay, so after your family's journey, after your own journeys, your own world exploration and so forth, today, what does being an Ecuadorian mean to you? What is your...
That's a difficult and not difficult question. A good answer will be, I think it's the right word, a mutt. I'm not from here, I'm not from there, I'm not from over there, I'm from there. I can summarize it and make the best of everything, of all the places you've been. Be a good citizen and learn, because it's changing so fast. Everybody has the right answer. I don't. So I question and I move around. And I try not to get upset with answers or questions. Just learn, because the human aspect is enormous. You can learn so much from everybody. And just give them a chance to express themselves. If you don't get upset, you get so much information. And they'll get a lot of my information also if I'm not upset. You know, because if I feel this is a waste of time, or because there's still that behind your head, my head. What can I share with the rest of the world, with the young people? What have I learned that I can pass on? Is the word legacy. It's a beautiful word in English. Ecuadorians don't think much of that. I think they do, but in a different way, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want to be on the picture. If I'm not in the picture, I'm not going to leave anything behind, sort of thing. That is not my way. So I'm anxious to do that. To say, what can I give back to the country I came from?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And it was a pleasure having tea with you as always.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of El Cafecito Travel Talks with Tony Lloyd. If you'd like to learn more about today's guest, check the podcast notes for links and information related to this episode. And if you have questions, stories, or topics you'd love us to explore in future episodes, feel free to reach out. Tony also helps independent travelers plan meaningful journeys throughout Central and South America, including cultural and community-based experiences. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help keep these conversations going, you'll find a contribution link in the podcast notes. Until next time, thank you for sharing a cafecito or tea with us, and safe travels wherever your journey may take you.